part of the channel's Rise with India Primetime segment. I'm Ubina Kapasi and lots lined up on the show today. First up, we're going to be taking a look at the announcements by the Finance Minister. What all does it entail? What difference would it make to your pocket, if any, especially on the EPFO front? Remember, there were several announcements with respect to the EPFO. The entire contribution from it, or rather to it, would come from the government's kitty. So what exactly does that mean? We will be taking a look at some of those announcements that pertain to you, our viewers of the Mony Show. And of course, we will also be getting your questions and queries answered. I'm sure you guys are quarantined at home. It's a great time to give your mutual fund portfolio a relook. Plus, given the fact that we could be facing an economic slowdown due to this lockdown announced by the Prime Minister to curtail the spread of the coronavirus, the question is, should you tap into your emergency funds? What should you do to manage your finances amidst this lockdown? That's what we'll be discussing today on the show. Also, a whole host of companies have been announcing buybacks. If you are a shareholder of any of these companies, should you tender in your shares? What are the points that you must take care of? We will be discussing that as well in the later part of the show. But before we do any of that, here's a look at the headlines. India enters day 2 of the 21-day lockdown. The number of COVID-19 cases rise to 649, with 3 new deaths reported from Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi will attend the virtual G20 summit, where global leaders discuss consolidated efforts to deal with the COVID outbreak. The centre rolls out 1.7 lakh crore rupee relief package for the poor to deal with the crisis. It includes food, fuel and cash for the needy. Also allows employees to withdraw Provident Fund to sustain their lives for the next 3 months. Experts laud the SOPs provided by the government to help the poor, but ask for more. Some relaxation on EMIs and paying back loans should be considered next, is the common demand raised. Markets see third straight day of gains as stocks Sensex soars over 1,400 points and Nifty ends above 8,600. The positive close for all sectors. We saw IndusInd jumping 45% on an intraday basis, and other gainers include L&T, HUL, Kotak and others. But the Nifty posts the worst series since 2008. Adding fuel to the stock market fire, US Senate clears the $2 trillion stimulus package after week-long intense deliberations. Bill hopes to offer relief to individuals, healthcare system and corporates. Headlines that we are tracking for you all evening on ET Now. But before I talk to you about mutual funds, I want to talk to you first about the announcements by the Finance Minister. There have been several, especially on the Provident Fund bit. That's one of the topics as well that we want to discuss. Of course, India is under a 21-day lockdown, which means that for a lot of us, it may be difficult to access our cash as well, depending on the business that essentially we are in. Not just that, business owners, meantime, may have difficulty meeting requirements retirements. The FM has stepped in over there as well. They've said that, look, the government will bear the EPFO contribution responsibility. So it's a bit of a relief for employers as well on that front. So that's, of course, with respect to EPF. Also, the FM said that the Provident Fund Scheme regulations will be amended, which will allow workers under EPFO to draw up to 75% of their non-refundable advance or 3 months of their wages, whichever is lower. So, folks, if you guys are having any sort of cash flow problem at this point, you can tap into your Provident Fund, your Employee Provident Fund, and you can, get yourself eased off into any cash flow mismatch you may be facing in your household by accessing the Employee Provident Fund scheme. Now, there are lots of other announcements as well for, the poor people living in just about near the poverty line, people who are in farming as well. I'm not going to get into that, but that's basically and this particular provision I'm discussing because a lot of you guys may be salaried, so it's going to be important for you guys to understand this. You can access your EPFO, draw up to 75% of the non-refundable advance or 3 months of the wages, whichever is lower, for you to tide over any cash crunch that you may face while you are at this point of time in the lockdown to curtail the coronavirus. Well, let's talk a bit more on essentially how you can as well tide yourself over amidst this crisis. How could you access your emergency funds? I mean, is this now the time to access your emergency funds? Among many other things, I'm joined by Harhavardhan Roongta to talk about the same. Harsh, always a pleasure having you with us on the Mony Show. First I just want to get in your take on this entire Provident Fund bid announced by the Finance Minister that employees can access their EPFO. Does this situation warrant for that? I mean, would you recommend that an employee dip into their retirement savings, right? I mean, technically an EPFO is your retirement saving. Do you think that as a worst case resort, they should dip into that bit? What would you recommend?
Mobina, the issue is very clear. I mean, if you are completely strapped for funds, I mean, if your salaries haven't been credited, in case you do not have enough bank balance even otherwise, and you don't even have an emergency fund. So in case you completely strapped for fund, this is a source of cash flow for you. So most certainly with a very heavy heart, it's ideally not supposed to be withdrawn. You should not use an EPF fund as an emergency fund. But in case you do not have any other provisions, I guess you're left with no other choice, and this would then come as a blessing in disguise. And yes, I mean, just to reiterate a point, in case you do not need to withdraw, do not look at this as an opportunity to get money out of your EPF. So that's not the idea. So very clearly, in case you have no other resort left, yes, this could serve as a as a temporary purpose for your immediate cash flow requirements.
All right. So ideally, of course, an EPFO, I mean, you should not essentially tap into your EPFO. It's mostly meant for your retirement savings. Now, Harsh, what if you're in that really bad situation? I mean, you've probably had really bad financial saving habits, and I hope this will teach you a lesson. It's going to be the hard way. But, we've always said that you have to ensure that you keep an emergency fund roughly of 6 to 8 months of your monthly expenses. In which circumstances should an individual take this offer put forward by the Finance Minister, where an individual can add, can withdraw up to 3 months of their wages, or basically the amount that the FM has allowed?
Mubina, very clearly, first you would try and use all the cash flow that you have in your bank account. Say, hypothetically, you had some balance in your bank account which has not been used up for anything else. So first, of course, during these crises, you will want to use that fund. If you do not have that kind of cash and your salary hasn't been credited, then of course you will try and dip into your emergency fund. Now, emergency fund is something that we've been advocating for a very, very long time, stating that in case suddenly something happens and dawns upon you that you've got a job loss. So this is not really a job loss situation, but of course you're not going to work, and there's great possibility that you might not get your salaries on time as well. So of course you will need to meet your expenses which you're incurring on a day-to-day basis. And how do you go about doing that? So you will have to dip into your emergency fund for the moment, and hopefully everybody would have at least had a 3 months emergency fund corpus requirement ready. If not, then of course, then there is no choice, and you will need that money right now. How do you get it? Everybody else, if you're looking to borrow from friends and relatives, I'm sure everybody is going through those kind of situations wherein they will not want to part with their excess cash flow that they have right now, because you don't know how long this is going to go on. I mean, we've heard that the lockdown for up till 15th April, but if things do not come under control by then most certainly this lockdown will be extended, and so will the requirement for money. So yes, if you have no other choice, I mean, you will need to dip into your EPF, and that's exactly what the government is trying to do.
Okay, so if you have not created that emergency fund corpus, then you'll have no option but to dip into your EPFO now that the finance minister has as well allowed and tweaked the provisions of the Provident Fund scheme in order for you to be able to tide over any sort of cash crunch that you may be facing. Yes, it's not a job loss kind of situation. It's not a pay cut kind of a situation. You know, there may be some delay in you receiving your salary because of how things are. But yeah, it's not a job loss kind of situation. And yeah, maybe the EPFO is one way of helping you tide over this cash crunch. So Harsh, I mean, I know right now people, of course, may be facing that bit of cash crunch at this juncture. But let's assume that one has utilized and dipped into their emergency fund already. PF, of course, not very strong. Do you think now is the time that they should start slowly liquidating their mutual funds? If they have no other option, because at the end of the day, that's what mutual funds as well are for, right? If they've dipped into their emergency fund, the PF is not strong enough, what would be the order of monetizing the assets that you have, whether it's FD, whether it's mutual funds, PPF as well for that matter, if that lockdown period is over? What should be the hierarchical order then?
So well, very clearly, Mobina, as I've mentioned that we have a current situation wherein the lockdown is until 15th of April. However, if things do not settle by then there's a great possibility that the lockdown will be extended. So very clearly, when you're planning, I mean, space out your cash flow in such a manner, assuming that the lockdown will go until end of April or mid of May for that matter. So plan your expenses accordingly. And now, in case you need the money, then of course you have to dip into your savings. I mean, there is no other alternative. And why do you invest? So that you can meet any future contingencies or goals in that for that matter. So in case you have no other option, then you have to start liquidating. Now, in terms of hierarchy, if you're asking, of course, this is not the time to liquidate equities. I mean, we've seen erosions to the extent of about 30 to 40% in your equity portfolio. And of course, if your requirements are long term, I mean, if the goals that you were saving for are long term, then you would let equity be as it is. The first thing, if you're in extreme cash flow situation, then again, with a very heavy heart, you will have to stop your SIPs and your EMIs for that matter. Just ensure that you're, for the moment surviving and meeting all your expenses until things get back to normal. Now, in case you need to liquidate, of course, fixed deposits are going to be the first level of liquidation, because there will be a very minimal penalty on that, and you will get the cash immediately, and the capital erosion in that sense will be very, very limited to the extent of the principal on the penalty, which also will be taken care of by the interest that the FD generates. In case you've exhausted all that, then of course you will have to go to the last step, which is equity. So whatever you can liquidate without much of penalty and capital erosion at this juncture, just remove a little bit, so that at least for the next 15-20 days you can manage yourself, and then hopefully things will be fine. If they're not, then look at liquidating the other part. You don't need to go and liquidate everything. The world is not crumbling down yet. I mean, we're not looking at a situation wherein just liquidate everything, keep in cash. So I have interacted with a couple of people, and they're concerned. They say just liquidate everything, and I like to keep cash in my bank. Well, that's not really required at this juncture. Just remove something that you need to meet your expenses for the next 15-20 days, and then take a call again. So do not liquidate out of equities just because you feel everything is going to go and it's a doomsday kind of situation and nothing's going to exist after this.
Okay. So Harsh, we are speaking, of course, on one extreme end where people are really finding it difficult to meet ends, and they're having a cash flow problem, and hence are looking at the different assets that they have saved up their money into, like PF, MF, PPF, FD, so on and so forth. Now, on the other end, let's say if an individual is looking at the equity markets and saying, look, it's like everything is on sale, right? Because while of course there's been a bit of a recovery in the markets in the last 3-4 days, it's obviously come off significantly in the last couple of months. NAVs have been whacked out of shape. So I mean, logically speaking, you buy when things are a bit more cheaper compared to what they were earlier. So, I mean, would you recommend then that viewers increase the SIPs? Let's say if someone was doing a 10,000 rupee SIP, he or she can perhaps take this low market opportunity to increase it to 15,000, 20,000 and thus get more units of at a same or the similar price?
Absolutely, Mobina. So very clearly, in case you are flushed with cash or you have certain excess liquidity in your hand right now, you should try and capitalize upon this opportunity of getting things at a cheaper rate. So we've already talked about the index having taken a beating of about 30 to 40% as of today. So why would you not go shopping? So there's only one concern that we would have is that is it likely to go down by another 5 or 10% or 15% from here? Well, that could be a possibility. I will not be able to predict whether this is the bottom in the market and you should just go about buying right now. There is a possibility that you would get, market to go down another 5, 10 or 15%. The issue is, are you finding this level attractive enough? So that's the decision you will take as on today. As I said, it could go down further, but that's not none of us can even ever predict that, and it's not in our control. So if you believe that there's a good level to buy and you have excess liquidity with you, you can also take another approach of a staggered manner. Suppose for hypothetically, you would have a lump sum of say about 5 lakhs. You could decide that I want to invest say about a lakh of rupees at 20% into 5 tranches. So you can decide the periodicity with which you want to invest. You can say 1 lakh every month or 1 lakh every fortnight, and then you can just like a booster dose to your existing investments. You could pump in some money at these levels. Even if the markets go down, you would still have another set of money to invest. If it starts going up, then again you've done that kind of a bit of investment of 1 lakh every month for that matter, or every fortnight. Similarly, answering your question about SIPs, yes, if you have excess liquidity, then why would you not increase your SIPs? Because SIP in any ways mean that you will have a periodic investment. It could be monthly, it could be weekly, whatever is the frequency, you would start investing more. And of course, getting anything which is 30 to 40% lower is always welcome.
From this answer of yours, Harsh, I also understand, and I hope our viewers as well deduce this important point that stagger your money, stagger your investments. So if it's an SIP, then yes, why not increase your money a little via an SIP? And also, we don't know where the market is, right? Nobody can time the market. We don't know if it's going to go up from here. If the cases increase, it could go down as well. So don't invest all your money right now. So one clear lesson is don't invest all of the surplus money that you have right now. If you're keen to put it in the equity market, stagger it. It could be quarterly, it could be bi-weekly, it could be once a month, like how an SIP is done. That's, I think, an important lesson to understand. Don't do lump sum. Opt for the options given by Mr. Roongta. Okay, well, folks, now that you are on lockdown, you're quarantined at home, it's a great time to log on to the CMS website, procure your portfolio and get it checked by our portfolio experts. Harhavardhan Roongta, of course, is here. And when we come back from the break, we're going to kickstart our Ask the Money Show segment. We'll keep the phone lines open. 24990300 is the number that you can call in all. So we will take a very short break. Let those calls accumulate. Be back with Ask the Money Show.